Episode 11, Current Thoughts on the World. In this episode, John and Lindsay discuss the death of George Floyd, the rioting, and the current state of humanity. In the upcoming episodes, we're going to be discussing marriage, debt, and pornography. Send us any questions or advice you have in regards to those topics. You can email us at confessionsofuspodcast@gmail.com or DM us on Facebook or Instagram. Thanks for listening. This is John.
This is Lindsay.
And this is Confessions of Us.
Hi.
Hi. We're back, everybody.
Yeah.
Took a week off.
Just a week, yeah.
Yeah. I know it doesn't feel like a week, but technically it was just 1 week.
Yeah, it felt longer.
Yeah. It was, it's been a wild, crazy few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Just, I don't know. I don't have words to express how crazy it's been, you know? Like, this season, or these last few weeks have been, I don't even know what to compare it to. But it just is like, if I don't know.
Yeah. So we figured for this episode. So in the next couple episodes, or in the next, I don't know exactly when, but in the upcoming episodes, we wanted to talk about debt and pornography and marriage and those types of things. But obviously life happens.
Yeah.
And things come up, and often your plans change.
Very much so.
So for us, we got back from our little vacation. We released the wonderful episode 10 with your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Go check it out if you haven't.
Yeah.
That was a ton of fun. A lot of good stuff in there. But we kind of just wanted to, because this is actually one of the reasons we didn't record an episode last week, is, one of the purposes of this podcast is we talk about life.
Yeah. And
this has been a part of our life, just like everybody, I think, here in the States. And we just didn't know how to talk about it,
What specifically are you talking about?
So basically, I'm referencing George Floyd.
Yeah.
And obviously, unless you have been in a coma the last couple of weeks, was killed by a police officer. And, from that, there has been protests.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those protests have evolved into riots and looting. And we're just seeing some really interesting and unprecedented things, I think, at least here in the States. Maybe this is, and how it is in other places sometimes. But yeah, we just didn't really know how to talk about it, we have, it's a heavy topic, so we're just going to share our heart. We're just going to share, what's been going through our minds.
Yeah.
And, this is not to say that we know everything, we're correct.
Yeah.
We're just two people, and there's a lot of opinions out there floating around. There seems to be obviously a couple sides, forming, those types of things. But yeah, so that's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. Just kind of a raw episode.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Hopefully it won't be too heavy.
I know. Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, so like John was saying, we were in Payson visiting with my family, and it was,
I think it's right when we got back.
It happened, I think, on Monday.
Yeah, because I remember right when we got
morning.
back. Yeah, you were looking. We got back, and you're like, "Did you see?" Because I think you took a nap.
Oh, I don't know, but I was looking. No, I was on my phone.
That's what I mean.
At my.
You woke up and you were like, "Did you hear about what happened?" And then,
yeah, and I remember exactly where I was. I think I was sitting on the couch. I must have gotten up from nap. I was sitting on the couch and I was looking at my phone at a friend someone had posted, and I was like, "What is that?" So obviously watched it and just in shock, in absolute shock about, what happened to him. And do you want to kind of talk about what your response was when, where you were, yeah.
Well, I remember, so you saw it before I did.
Mm-hmm.
And, you started you know, you did you watch the whole thing or just watch a clip of it?
No, I could only watch the clip. I couldn't.
Yeah. So I think we saw it on Instagram,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that video I think was probably about 10 minutes or so, maybe a little longer. Anyways, and I just remember you saw it and you just went off.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't believe.
Yeah.
And for me, you just know, like, there's always more than one side to the story, or like what's going on. Like, let's slow down. Like, let's examine what's happening. Because obviously, you know, police brutality or incidents with the police come up, and you know, you don't know the context leading up to the situation, and you know, there's just so much to the story. So I'm like, let's slow down. You know, let's. And then I watched the video.
You watched the entire video.
I watched the entire thing, and I was like, I don't see how. I don't see anything, because clearly the video, you know, for I think about 9 minutes, 8-9 minutes, you see the cop just like leaning on the back of his neck.
Yeah.
And there's no words. There's no whatever.
There were words. He says, I can't breathe.
I'm not saying, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like just to describe like why he would do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was like, well, you know, maybe he thought, you know, if he let him up, he would try something. And then like, but you can see like he's cuffed. And then like doesn't look like he's resisting, you know. And then again, I was like, why is he not in the back of a cop car? And like all these things start coming up. But then just watching him, I mean, more or less just
die.
Yeah, and beg for his life.
Yeah.
Was just incredibly. In a way, that is almost more harsh to see than someone like being shot or instantly dying.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
You know, he slowly suffocated or whatever. And here, let me say this one thing. We're not here to get into the nitty-gritty details.
No.
We're not here to take sides. You know, I think that those people have been drawing those lines, and we're not here to fight with people.
Yeah.
You know, this is just our thoughts about what's been going on.
Very much just conversation with you back and forth about the things we've thought about.
That's it. So if, you know, and like I said, we're always open, you know, to talk and everything like that. But I just want to make that clear that, you know, there's a lot of emotion and rightly so going on right now. So we're not trying to inflame anything. So that's it. I just want to make that very clear. And so take all of this just with a grain of salt. These are just two people talking.
Yeah.
So I just feel like I needed to. Anyways, so the video is they're just horrible, you know? And like I said, it's almost easier to watch someone be shot or instantly die. As horrible as that is to say, than watch the man slowly die. Whatever the underlying reasons are, I don't think are important. I think clearly the trauma or what was happening to him had influence on him, you know, of him passing away. So, because obviously if someone wasn't kneeling on his neck, he probably would not have died.
Yeah.
So it was rough. And part of the thing for me, or you go ahead. You go ahead after you tell me what your thoughts were after you watched the video.
I'll probably get emotional, but I think that that made me literally sick to my stomach seeing that happen on a video. And not just seeing him, but then seeing the other cops stand there when the other pedestrians, I guess you could say, or citizens, whatever, were saying, he can't breathe. Can you hear him? You know, and so many emotions came up, you know, like why wouldn't, like if someone is saying they can't breathe and someone, it's a life. You are, in my mind, as I'm watching this, sick to my stomach, trying to make sense of it all. I think that's kind of where I was at in that moment. Like,
sure.
But there's an aspect that you can't make sense of it all, you know? And, he was a human being.
Yeah.
George Floyd was a human being.
Sure.
regardless of past, regardless of present, whatever, take that away and just remember this man was a human being. And
I also remember you saying to me, it's like, why did someone not do something?
Oh, that was I would say that was a big part of my response in that moment was there are how many video clips of George Floyd being suffocated or what I don't know what you call that, either suffocated or something, but no one's doing anything. No one's like, I mean, this is what I told you. I'm like, if I was there, I would literally probably throw something at the cops or do something to...
Yeah, you're pretty wild.
Okay.
When it comes to that kind of stuff. So I believe you.
Yeah. Well,
I think you would have tried to do something.
I would have, and I mean, I say this, I hope I would have. I hope I would have done something. And what saddens me is that today we have so many people on their phone trying to make a record of something, yet people are you really worried about the person? Or are you, I mean, I don't know. Like, still, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around that. People are literally seeing this man being suffocated. And yet there's no action other than let me just videotape this. And that.
Well, it's just, what's also interesting is like, even just watching that initially, I'm like, that doesn't seem like a very good idea from the police officer.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Just really think about like, okay, well, you get your air through your esophagus, all these things. I'm like, well, you couldn't have kneeled on a different part of him, or
that's
something.
True. That's true.
But again, what is also very interesting is watching the expression on the officer that was kneeling on him.
Mm.
And there's just no expression there, which was really interesting to me. And, and you can infer to it a lot of different things, blah, blah. And here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to instantly assume it was racist because I have no idea. I have not seen evidence of this, because there are times, especially when police officers, there's records of a lot of the things, you can dig that stuff up, I guarantee.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if it was like civilians or whatever, I think that's different. But in this situation, I think that you could mount a case against him if he was truly racist. But regardless, I think that he either didn't believe George Floyd, because I've heard somebody say something to the extent of, well, sometimes you're trained that if people can talk, that they can breathe, right? But that also doesn't mean that his lack of oxygen wasn't affecting him.
No, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, but it just makes me also wonder, like, had he done that similar submission position to somebody else and been okay, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, we can infer, we can try to understand what fully happened and not be right, and that's the thing. And that's the thing with all these situations is, we see a clip like that. And of course, I don't think anybody would watch that and be like, that was right. Or was not affected by it. Because it was a hard thing to watch, like you said. And especially like if you truly value human life, which I think majority of people do, just watching that man slip away and just what he was saying. I think at one point he cried for his mom. And just the sheer terror and how scared he was, I couldn't imagine. Because you're going into panic, right? Because you can't breathe and everything like that. And regardless of anything else, you take all the other aspects off the table. And like you said, I liked what you said, that was a man, you know, regardless of his choices in life, all those things in that moment, I think don't matter because, like I said, he wasn't struggling. He wasn't trying to go for the officer's gun, any of that other stuff.
Yeah.
This was just him. And that's the other thing is you see other camera angles And it looks like there's more cops that were leaning on him to a certain extent.
Oh, really? I don't know.
Yeah, like I don't know if they were the whole time, but like there was 4 cops there. Like if you can't submit one dude, like I would be shocked, or I don't know. Like I said, we're trying to dive in and we're trying to.
You can't make sense of like, almost in a sense, not hate for life, but like disregarding a human life. You can't make sense of that. You just can't. Like that's inhumane.
Well, that makes me think he has either done that before and not had issues, right? Because again, maybe he's done that before and, he submitted, he's someone who's in submission and they say they can't breathe, blah, blah, blah. And like everything ends up being fine, right? This is my thought because like he just didn't move. And the other part of me was like, then what's weird is and maybe like his perspectives, I don't know. But at least from the one video, which I think all of us have seen, you can see him pass out, right?
Yeah.
And then he just stayed there. You would think at that point, you'd be like, oh, I don't want this guy to die. So I'm going to get off of him, and resuscitate him or just allow him to breathe, right? Obviously, something to that extent.
Yeah.
And he didn't move. And it's like, that just doesn't make any sense, right? Unless, and then I think that's why a lot of people, infer that he did have hate in his heart, that he had some malice in his heart. And
I mean, you just don't know the type of guy that he was, like you said. I mean, he could have done that at a different point and the person was fine. But I mean, if you look at his face, I mean, I feel like that's something that I was looking at and then it's plastered everywhere.
Sure.
And the guy just looked lifeless. The cop did. He just looked like...
Well, he wasn't responding to anything, it seemed like.
That's why I'm just like, dude.
You on drugs?
No. Well, the Asian cop too was just... it just blows my mind. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I don't have a ton of words to say other than just like, how do you not have a regard for another human? And I think that there are cops that are in it for the right reasons.
Sure.
In the States and worldwide, right? But like, I know a few cops and like, they have a love for people and want the best for all people and how, like...
Sure. And to protect their community.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Sure.
And I just... for someone whose job is to protect the community, yet there was no protection for him. There was no, in that moment, they were doing their job in the sense of arresting him, but that's just not what you do. You don't do that. You don't. In any case, if someone's saying they can't breathe.
Well, again, like what? Yeah, I mean, we can go in circles around this, but just what has either happened to this cop before? What experiences does he have, that lead him to that point?
Yeah. I don't know.
So, yeah, it's just, but I mean, I guess if you're looking for some sort of silver lining to everything, they were obviously all fired. And the main cop is going to have charges pressed against him. I think.
Was it second degree?
I think last thing I heard was second degree. I don't know if they finalized that or what's happening with that. And I think they are also trying to charge the other officers to some degree, like assisting or because that thing is no one did anything.
No.
They could have easily, my thought is, walked up and said, hey man, let's make sure he's okay.
I know.
And then you can resume or whatever. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's very weird, and hopefully they get to the bottom of the whole thing. And this man goes to prison for the crime that he committed. So, because it just was horrible. So, yeah, and then obviously the world just kind of
Is a shit show now.
just went into craziness. Yeah. I mean, that's one way of putting it.
I mean, it very much is like, and I don't want to touch on everything, but I just, when other people are getting abused, stores are getting destroyed, people trying to get back on their lives, get back, after COVID hit.
Oh, sure.
Like, there's no need for that, for looting and rioting in the sense of like destroying other people's property. I mean, I guess that's what looting and rioting is, or looting, right? Like it's just destruction. What I think is interesting is how, I don't know if I think I told you this, but COVID isn't going to be something that we really remember. We're going to remember this. Initially, like I remember COVID hit, we were isolated, right? And all these news or certain news posts were saying, like we're going to be millions of people are dying because of COVID, right? Sure. And then it came out that people, like the number that they had estimated for people to die was significantly.
Yeah, it was a gross overestimation.
Yeah. And so like in my mind, things were looking up. And
I know, right?
It was, yeah. And then
they're just trying to open up a little bit.
And John, what's his name? The guy from The Office.
Oh, John Krasinski.
Yeah, he started that show during COVID. And so there was all this like really fun, positive, looking on the best side of life during this. And I felt like we got to a good place of just, we can make the best in this situation.
Sure.
Then George Floyd died, and like there's this huge explosion of just anger, grief, and I think too, I mean, I don't know if I'm getting off topic, but like the stages of grief, and as a nation in response to George Floyd, I haven't actually thought about this. This kind of popped into my head, but like as a nation, we're all grieving George Floyd in some way. And the first stage of grief is anger.
Well, and that was one of the theories I had, was that what's exacerbated this situation is COVID. Because you take a horrible situation, you take a sect of the population that doesn't feel respected, doesn't feel like, the country cares about them, etc. And then you add the whole, no one's got jobs, on top of that, everyone's been frustrated, they've been locked in their homes.
Absolutely.
And this happens. And I think it was just a powder keg waiting to explode, period. And then something like this happens, where there's no two ways about it, and I think it obviously just set everybody off, Yeah, and that's what was interesting is this is something that so for me, I actually released a video on Instagram, if any of you care. But one of the things for me was that's the actual race conversation for me is not really new. And I think for a lot of people it's not. But, I've been seeing a lot of people where this has been brought to the forefront of their mind. But for me personally, I have been watching videos and listening to people talk and reading stuff for quite a few years now. Well, 4. I guess it's not quite a few, but so I've been seeing it simmering kind of below the surface.
Yeah.
And so I'm not entirely surprised. And like I said, when you get a community, the African American community, where they feel like they're not respected, people don't value them, all the things that have been going on. And you had COVID on top of that. It's just, people are, like you said, I do think there's a grieving process, especially when you have so many other cases, right, wrong, or indifferent, whatever your view is of those cases, where lives are being lost. Like I said, either justifiably, unjustifiably, it doesn't matter, because they are still lives, and you don't ever want to see anybody's life lost where it could have been prevented. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the first stage is. I know there's like a denial.
That was grief.
No, I know.
That's what I'm saying. Is that the first stage is grief?
Is anger? Or is it, I don't know.
Maybe grief is the overarching emotion. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I'm thinking like people that, were close to me that have died. Like for instance, my grandma died recently. And, I don't know if I necessarily needed to go through the entire stages of grief, but like, can you truly go through the stages of grief for someone you don't know? For instance, and what does that look like? But the response to George Floyd's death was anger, immediate anger. I mean, I would say sadness.
Sure. And
anger. And, but like, we all can agree that was like not right? That
sure.
And we can all agree to that. Now, how we respond to that injustice,
Well, I think how you respond is important.
Yeah.
And and that's the thing in this country is, and we can talk a little bit about the country later, but obviously everybody has the right to protest. Everybody has the right to free speech.
Yep.
And I think that stuff is important.
Mm-hmm.
And, clearly, there's been so many things that have happened throughout this country where people have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And where they want their voices heard or those types of things. And I definitely think looking at, how do we, I look at it this way, right? I don't necessarily think that we should abolish the police.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we should improve the police.
That's good.
And that's the whole reform topic is clearly there is some issues.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. Because part of what I had not seen until recently is all the stories of police brutality, not just to African-American population or community, but to white people, to, Hispanic people, to, every, this is not uniquely a one race thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy in Dallas, I think his name was Tony Timpa, who died very similar to George Floyd, where the cop was, I don't think he was quite on his neck. I think he was like maybe on his upper back, but they were kneeling him for like 14 minutes. And
he died?
He died. Yeah. And he had some other things going on. Like, I think he may have been like on psychiatric, I can't even talk, like meds. Yeah. Psychiatric meds, those types of things. And then I think he had some other stuff going on. So anyways, but they made fun of him. And
like the cops did?
Yeah,
or
they were
what?
slowly making fun of him. I mean, not like really horrible, but regardless. But he said the same thing as George Floyd did. He's like, "You're going to kill me. I can't breathe. I'm going to die." Like, and so to me, like, this is an overarching problem, right? Where regardless of, and I think on the cop topic, I think that would be incredibly difficult where maybe you go in, like you're this young, bushy-eyed person.
Yeah.
And you're full of these things you want to do for your community and people, all this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the job, I'm sure you see some horrible stuff.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that erodes away at your faith in humanity and just seeing people as human, because that's the thing is like the George Floyd situation, this other situation in Dallas, or these other situations is like, is there just that you have lost the perspective that these people are human?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's just a thought.
Yeah. But as you were saying, the type, if you go in really with the right heart, wanting to protect your community and, just ready for it. I'm like you said, because they, throughout their time in the police academy, working as a police officer, you're going to see some ridiculous crap, but part of me wonders, like, did they have anybody that the cops are accountable to like mentally deal with the things that they
what's
have
funny
to...
you say that. I actually had that thought when, obviously during one of the things is reforming the police during this time, but where or what kind of mental help are we getting them?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's
whether
what,
it's whether it's like a support group with older cops, they can pour into those things, whether it's with, a therapist. And I would think you would constantly need to digest those things, not bottle them up, because then it comes out in weird ways.
Yeah.
Because then maybe this had a part to play when you see a man kneeling on another man with zero emotion.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean,
I can only imagine. And
I mean, just talking about this now, instead of just saying, let's defund the police, why not enable them to be healthy in the job that they are in?
Well, and that's the thing.
That's a...
and that's the thing is like all these different aspects, I think that this is one thing I have learned is it's easy to pass judgment on other people when you have not walked in their shoes.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a police officer. I've never been a police officer. But the other flip side of this conversation is I cannot imagine the things that cops have to see. And, whether they're standing between us and people that want to do us harm, whether they're, responding to a domestic abuse or child abuse or just a number of things that they see.
Yeah.
And people say that, well, they don't have to train very hard to become cops. And then my other aspect is like, how many people do we have actually lining up to become cops these days?
Yeah, it's true.
So, they're probably a little desperate, which is a horrible place. We obviously don't want people that are protecting us to be, people are just doing it for whatever, right?
Yeah. They probably have to pass some like screening. I'm sure it's not just like a walk in the park.
Well, no, and I'm sure there is, but like, one of the arguments I've heard is they should just in generally have more schooling, more training.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any disagreement with that.
Yeah.
Or whether it's even like on top of that, you have like a mentorship program where you have younger officers working with older. And again, I don't know. A lot of that requires time and money. And again, we obviously do not have all the solutions. We're just simply talking, throwing out ideas, just kind of processing some of this. So
yeah.
Yet you're making all this noise with your feet. People can hear that. Just give me the eye, folks.
No.
Yeah. So it's a tough situation. Just like what to do with the police force. I don't think anybody is arguing that we can't improve it, restructure it, because the cops do everything. They do so much. And whether we can take some of those responsibilities away and give them to other people so they can focus on what they need to or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are some of the better things I've heard than just straight up getting rid of them. Because,
well, let me share this. So, I used to live in Washington for like 5 months, and I was living in an apartment, and there was I was there because I was nannying. It was one of my jobs. Watching how old was she? 6-month-old maybe. And I remember it was just me and the little girl in the apartment, and below us there was this like big like argument between maybe a mom and a son. And I was like scared for my life, and I wasn't going to go out the door, and so I actually ended up calling the police. And they showed up, and like I can hear everything, and so I think the mom was like, "No, he's fine, blah blah blah," and so they ended up leaving, because there was just no proof or type of thing. And then, like, I don't know if the cops drove away or whatever, but the guy comes up the stairs and bangs on the door. And he's like, I know it was you who called the cops. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm like terrified. Have this little girl that I have to take care of. So I'm like hiding in one of the rooms with the lights off.
I think you told me this story before.
Yeah. And I just think like example, that's something that, could there have been a different group of people that came and just checked on this domestic violence? I mean, I didn't know what was going on. Was he like about to beat his mom? Was he about to?
Sure.
And so I don't know, but.
Yeah. I mean, I really just hope and pray that the people that make these decisions not only take their time, that's a big one, involve the current police officers, because no one's going to understand the job or maybe how they can improve, I think, as well as them. Like I said, it's easy to judge these situations from the outside.
Yeah.
And because here's the thing, the one main thing that I haven't heard people talk about very well is one of the things that cops do, and again, this could be argued in several different ways, is they make sure that our rights are protected. So with one of the things that's been happening is, obviously I'm sure a lot of people heard this as well, there's been a section of Seattle, I think near the downtown area, where people have kind of taken it over. And they're calling it the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, CHAZ for short.
CHAZ.
And, from what you hear from the media, everything's great. There's this, that, whatever, right? But there's those reports coming out because there's actually 500 or so people that actually live in that area.
Oh.
And there's reports coming out that's saying that I don't want this. My rights are being infringed upon.
Wow.
But the cops have left that area. And so who's going to protect their rights? Because you either trust the government to protect your rights to a certain extent, or you have to protect your own rights. And that's a whole nother bag of chips right there.
Yeah,
but it's just weird. And I just hope, however they do these things, because I understand the want and the desire to change things. Obviously, clearly, the U.S. is on all sorts of fire, and there's been protests and looting, and one of the things is defunding the police. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I say that often. Because you can see so many times throughout history where people, quote unquote, wanted to do the right thing, and things have got royally jacked up. So,
well, let me say this real quick.
Yeah,
is that we're looking for a perfect system where perfection isn't reality. Perfection will never happen.
No, it won't.
Here on earth. That's not, in heaven where God is, like, that is perfection. God is perfection.
Sure.
And so we are looking for a flawed system to bring perfection.
That's good.
And that's
good.
Will never happen.
Yeah. Well, it's true. And then I see people say that, we just want to, get rid of racism and all those kinds of things. And of course, I think everybody agrees with that. But as I've been saying, is racism will never be gone because the world is full of fallen people. Yeah. And we're all sinful.
Yep.
And I have never met anybody, and I don't think it's possible for us to not have, preconceived notions in our mind, have prejudices, have racism, if you want to say, because we can obviously all be racist and prejudiced against each other for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But we can't expect perfection because it's not going to happen. This ain't heaven.
No. And people are, regardless if you're saying you're protesting for something, you're ultimately protesting deep down for a complete shift. For instance, let me give you an example. So sex slavery, sex trafficking disgusts me to my core. And when it comes to children,
sure.
And for me, I would want to do completely away with that. Cut the system off.
Sure.
Make it go away. Now, will that actually happen in our lifetime? Where sex trafficking will go away? Probably not, right? And so how do we, that would be a perfection dream for that to be completely abolished when, again, I would be looking for a perfect plan, perfect thing when I can do my best to protest. I can do my best to try and find some sort of better way to monitor those things. I don't know if I'm making sense if this is kind of like way left field, but in a practical sense, that's how I could compare it. Is we're looking for a perfect system in a flawed system.
Sure.
Like, you
said it better the first time.
Sorry.
It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. And that's what I think is interesting about this time is maybe we can end on this thought is, again, we're not here to debate the riots and, whatever. We have our stance, on that. And I mean, our stance is simple. Here's the thing is I understand that people are in pain and there's going to be pain that not all of us are going to understand.
Yeah.
But what we do understand is we understand what it is to be human. And one thing I don't like about this conversation, this is from both sides, is I almost feel like people are saying the same thing or they're almost watching the same movie, but they're getting they're seeing two totally different things. Because two sides are saying very similar things. And what's interesting is, there's a humanity aspect where I think people feel like because these certain things are being said, whether it's Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, or whatever the hell is being said, is that people don't matter. There's not a humanity aspect. Yeah. And the one thing I think that we can all recognize is obviously our country has some really horrible things in its past. And people have done horrible, horrible things to other people. And it's just, here's the thing is I think it's very important that we continue to, we have to remember the past. We have to, it's the whole thing of if you don't know the past, you're doomed to repeat it. Yeah. And here's the thing is all these things that have been happening in this country in terms of maybe racism or whatever is not a uniquely United States thing. It's a human thing. And that's what we always have to remember is like you said, you were using the example of sex trafficking. Horrible stuff is always going to happen like that. Yeah. Because you had, the two tribes in Africa, I don't remember how long it was ago, maybe 10, 20 years ago now, where they were killing each other. 800,000 people died. And they were like neighbors, basically. But I guess where I'm trying to go with this is we all have to kind of, and here's the thing, I have said these things and I know I'm trying to wrap it up. I'm tired and I'm rambling a little bit. And there's just a lot of pain. There's so much pain. And when you're in, and I think what you said, the stages of grief is important. And when you're in so much pain, it's hard to hear that people may have your best interest at heart or want your best interest.
Yeah, that's good.
Or when people are in so much pain, you don't know what to say. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the big thing is, here's the thing, I'll say this again, and people probably get mad at me for this, but the line "shut up and listen," I'm sorry, is a horrible line. It just is. Just, again, people being in pain, right? We still have to treat each other with decency, right? Regardless of anything else. Because when we start losing that, that's when we start going to really bad places. That's when we have a lack of meaning for life, lack of care for life. I'm missing the word I'm trying to say, but
value.
Yeah, lack of value of life. Because I think you could walk up to anybody, especially if they're your buddy, and be like, "Hey man, let's grab a beer. I just want to talk." Who's not going to want that, right? I want to hear people's stories. I want to hear people's stories regardless, but especially if it's, things that you've experienced and everything like that, absolutely. Who's not going to want to treat another human like a human being? Yeah. And we have to constantly remember that in this conversation is that if we do have to be in this together, if we do want to make good reform, but we have to be smart about it. We have to remember there's always multiple sides to a story. you know, and there's always multiple solutions, and, you know, we can just put our best foot forward. So, like, let's just slow down, continue to remember to treat people like humans.
Yeah.
Like, because that's all we have at the end
Or
of the day.
better than humans. Treat them better than humans.
Well, sure. But
I mean, I
remember,
just saw that video today about that. Was she an officer? That video?
I actually have not seen that one.
It's really good. I'm going to post it to our...
Yeah, tell me to end like with your 30-second thought, because I just rambled for way too long.
30-second thought. I'll end with 2. There's always more to the story. And I'll end with saying that treat each other better than just a human. Because how do you want to treat... I want someone to treat me better than how I see myself. Sure. And how I see myself sometimes isn't the greatest. I don't have the greatest lens on who I am as a person sometimes. And so if just keeping that in mind when I treat other people the way, like, go the extra mile for someone, you know? This may kind of sound silly, but like, I picked up groceries at Smith's I did a click list and gave the girl a tip. And she was like, you don't have to do that. You have to do that. I was like, but I want to. And so, like, just how can you treat someone better than just a human?
I have a really good thought I want to end on.
Okay, got it.
That's what you said right there. Real fast. I heard a story one time where, just in terms of people feeling like an actual human being, like they have value. It was a story of, I think it was around the end of World War II, and a concentration camp was being liberated. I heard this from a book. And one of the main tactics of the Nazi Party was to dehumanize the Jewish people, right? They were monsters, they were whatever. If you haven't seen, what's it called, Jojo Rabbit? Side tangent, excellent movie.
Oh.
Yeah, really, really good.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, where his imaginary friend was Hitler. Anyways, excellent movie. It actually talks a little bit about this. Anyways, so, one of the things they did is they brought in, I think the American troops, they brought in lipstick and clothes and these types of things, but they helped them. I don't remember exactly all the details, but what it did is not only did it make a statement that you are human, but it helped these people think about their humanity again that had been stripped away from them.
Yeah.
And I pray to God that our country is not this lost. But I think what goes to your point is, let's kind of take a breath here and look at each other like, you know, obviously you can use the line that there's only one race, which is the human race, which I think is important. But that we're in this, we truly are in this together. We're stuck on this planet together.
Yeah.
We ain't going nowhere. And especially in this country, we are full of every color of person. And I think that if people were truly honest and they looked past any sort of heart or prejudice in their heart, and that, at least know this is true for me. Like I don't know. I'm losing my words. You matter. All of us matter.
Yeah.
You know, without going into a huge tangent of.
I feel like that should be the hashtag, you matter. I feel like that should be the hashtag right now.
Yeah. Your life matters. You know,
your life matters.
Black lives matter. You know, of course they do. And for them, I shouldn't, you know, I don't mean like them, but for the African American community to think that people don't care about them is heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely.
So, all right, let's end this because we're fading.
Yeah.
It's been a long day.
Okay.
So we love you guys. And
praying for you.
Yeah, we're praying for you. I don't know exactly when we'll get those other topics. So, but be sure to reach out with any questions you have. And we'd love to answer those in those questions or in those episodes. So
this is Lindsay.
And this is John.
This is Confessions of Us.
Night, guys.
Good night.
If you'd like to support Confessions of Us, you can head over to confessionsofus.locals.com. And there you can make any sort of donation you would like to the show. Also, head over to Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube and check us out at Confessions of Us Podcast. If you would like to send us any questions, you can DM us on Facebook or Instagram or email us at confessionsofuspodcast@gmail.com.